We're coming to you from CPAC 2018 in National Harbor, Maryland. I'm Rob Louie, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Signal, and we're joined today by Ambassador John Bolton. Thanks for being with us.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So you're quite busy here on CPAC, up and down the media row here, as well as speaking on panels. Obviously, your experience in foreign policy brings a unique perspective to a lot of the conversations that are taking place. And one of the discussions that you had at CPAC was specifically on the threats facing the United States. Can you share with us what you feel in your perspective are some of these greatest threats?
Well, I think the most important strategic fact about the Trump administration is that it faces a range of threats across the entire spectrum. And what has happened is the country has inherited the consequences of a lot of Obama's mistakes. So I've been saying that the due bills are now coming due on the Trump administration's watch on nuclear proliferation, the threat of North Korea, the failure of the Iran nuclear deal, the continuing threat of international terrorism, the strategic threats of Russia and China. There are a lot of them out there, and they require different levels of attention and response. The president, I think, basically is pursuing a Reaganite peace through strength foreign policy. I think a lot of people thought he might be outside the conservative mainstream. I don't think that's correct. You can agree or disagree with this or that policy, but I think he understands, and that's why he's proposed a significant increase in the military budget, just for starters.
Well, so one of the things that you're absolutely correct, there was a lot to clean up in the wake of Obama's 8 years. Where do you see the administration as having, so far, some of the greatest achievements when it comes to foreign policy?
Well, I think certainly things like acknowledging Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel. You know, this is
a big applause line for him in his speech today as well.
It's hardly a shock. We've discovered after 70 years where the capital is. But the point of it is not simply that it rectifies a long-standing mistake in American policy. It shows that it rests on the real world, and it shows that when the president says something, he follows through on it. This has global significance. The first politician to say he backs Jerusalem being the capital and then to do it. So it's a big signal in the Middle East, but I think around the world. The attack on the Syrian use of chemical weapons after classic Barack Obama saying it would be a red line if he saw chemical weapons activity and not following through, the president follows through. Taking a tough line on the Iran nuclear deal, taking a tough line on North Korea. We haven't solved those problems yet, but I think simply saying to the world Barack Obama is no longer president is a big step forward.
What's your message to CPAC attendees on China, another topic that you'll be discussing?
Well, I think we need a much more comprehensive strategy on China. I think back to the Cold War concept of linkage. We have issues with China on trade. We have issues with them on their aggressive stance in the East-South China Seas. You know, their relations with us are not going to get better unless we have improvement across the board with them, North Korea being another example. So China clearly has its own strategic plan. They think in long terms. They think comprehensively. We're not so good at that in the United States. That's one of the perils of democracy. But we need a response. We have not had one for 8 years under Obama. And I think it's, you can see what the elements would be. The president's focused on the trade issue, China's violations of its WTO commitments, its discrimination against foreign investment, its piracy of intellectual property from foreign investors and traders. But we need to move beyond the economic area. You need it across the board.
You mentioned North Korea in the context of China, obviously with so much attention on the Olympic Winter Games in South Korea and North Korea's role, sending Kim Jong-un's sister. What do you make of all of the steps that they've taken just in the last couple of weeks? It seems that certainly they've been able to send a certain message to the media, which they've lapped up, I think, much to the chagrin of conservatives.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the entire North Korean involvement in the Olympics was a propaganda ploy, marching as a joint team. You know, they've done that 3 times before, so there's nothing new in the North Korean playbook, but they're outstanding propagandist, and I think that's why when Vice President Pence went to South Korea for the opening ceremony, he had a very difficult assignment. I think he performed it well, try and blunt the North Korean propaganda initiative. But the purpose of it was to do, unfortunately, what it's done, which is divert our attention from their continuing progress on their nuclear weapons and on their ballistic missiles. So we'll have the closing ceremony shortly. They've actually sent North Korea a general who has commanded North Korean attacks against South Korea. This is the real face of North Korea. Forget the lady cheerleaders. Now we've got the really cynical way to end their participation. We're back on the nuclear issue, and we got some hard decisions to make. Options are running out. Time is running out before North Korea gets the capability to hit targets in the United States. So our options are very limited, unfortunately.
You serve distinguishedly as the United States ambassador to the United Nations. Nikki Haley has received many compliments and praise for her leadership there. What advice do you have for her in that job?
Well, I think she's doing a great job. I think she's a very effective spokesperson for the United States. I told her a couple months ago, I was up in New York, I was really envious of her because she seemed to function without supervision from the State Department. I wish I could have said the same, but it's obviously something that gets a lot of attention around the world. I think she's stayed close to President Trump and reflects his views. And in some of these areas like Iran, like North Korea, how it plays out in the UN has an effect on us. So you have to take it seriously whether you like it or not. It's part of the real world we operate in.
And finally, you've been coming to CPAC for a number of years. This is always a great opportunity to bring you back onto the Daily Signal. What do you think of the mood here this year, right? Your interaction with the attendees and other people, positive, negative?
Well, I think it's definitely picked up with the President's arrival today. I think people are worried about the 2018 election. And I think a lot's at stake in terms of control of the House, control of the Senate. So that's what this gathering of conservative activists really involves. Talk about policy, talk about politics, and I think people have their eye on that election coming up this November.
Ambassador John Bolton, thanks for being with the Daily Signal.
Well, glad to be with you. Thanks again.
We'll be back with more interviews soon. Thank you.